We're live. Okay. Good
We
evening.
made it.
Yeah, we made it.
By the grace of God, we're here.
Yes. Hey, Don. We're doing the Irish ones. It is
Yep.
St. Patrick's Day, so it's perfect, right? Or is
Yep.
it?
Yesterday was St. Patrick's. Yeah. But
Oh,
close
yeah.
enough. We got to share it. I mean, we have to share his life.
Every
Um,
day. Every day is a day for me. Every day is a new day. I love every day. Every day is great.
good.
So, um, you told me before we got started that you had some snow and it stayed.
Yeah, it's just starting to melt now. It snowed last night, and it's been cold all day, windy, and now it's just starting to. I started hearing the drip in the rain gutter of the
Oh
water
yeah, yeah.
starting to melt. So we'll see.
So it's warming up through the night. You
Yeah.
told. Yeah,
Yeah.
it'll be a warm night.
It's a fun time of year. I like it. Yesterday it was
Yeah.
65 in Freedom units or 18 degrees in Freemason units. And so it was toasty and nice, it was like swimming weather.
Yeah.
And today, not so
Swimming
much. Today it's
weather.
snow time. So,
Swimming weather for Wim Hof.
yeah, for the mountain boys.
Yeah. Um, I did. I signed up. I don't know, almost a month ago now, on Ian McGilchrist's channel for like a web Zoom
Mm,
conversation that he had with Matthias Desmet.
really?
Oh, it was so good. Yeah, it was super good. There were 250 people in the Zoom meeting, and
Oh,
quite a few of them got to ask questions, and it was really good. It was about a
yeah,
couple
that's
hours. So that's what I did this morning, and I've of course just been pondering ever since.
yeah, yeah. I bet. Yeah, that would get the juices flowing for sure.
Yeah, totally,
That's
totally.
cool.
It was really good.
I'm a big McGilchrist fan. I'm
Oh,
very grateful for his work.
yeah, me too. Me too. And I'm a huge Desmet fan, and I started reading Desmet. Oh, I guess the beginning of the lockdowns.
I don't know if I've read anything of his.
He just has one book called The Psychology of Totalitarianism,
I have
which I cannot recommend highly enough.
I have um, this book. Where is it? I have the Origins of Totalitarianism
Yeah,
by.
well, he draws most of his references from Hannah Arendt.
Okay, and it's a hefty tome,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but
She's amazing. She's amazing.
yeah, yeah,
By the
yeah.
way,
It's disturbingly relevant right now. That book.
oh yeah. Yes, I don't know if anybody watched it, but there was a great podcast with. Do you know who Duncan Trussell is?
Yes, wasn't he the guy? Is he one of Joe Rogan's
Yeah.
comedian friends? Yeah,
Mm. Yeah, I think they're really old friends, and
yeah,
Duncan's a crazy person.
yes.
And it. Duncan has his own podcast, so it was Duncan's 666th episode, and so he said they were. He introduced it, and he said he was going to go out and buy devil costumes. He invited Joe Rogan on, and they did it actually in Joe's studio, but he was going to buy devil costumes, but he didn't. Instead, they dressed up as Lex Friedman.
Oh boy.
But here's the deal:
Interesting.
if you
Is
have
that
any,
the illustration of the banality of evil? Because if
yes,
there's anyone more
exactly,
banal than
you got it. I
Lex
didn't have to
Friedman.
explain it. I'm like, they dressed up as bureaucrats.
Yeah, exactly. That's hilarious.
You got to watch it, Jeremy. It was one of the best conversations I've listened to for a long, long time.
Really?
Yes,
Because Duncan is kind of
he's a
he's
crazy man.
he's crazy. Yeah.
Well, he surprised me a few times,
Huh.
and so did
Well,
Joe.
I'm intrigued.
Yeah, you got to watch it. And Pete from Strange Theology has done a couple videos on it. I watched one and I don't know if he's done the second one yet or if it's still upcoming, but yeah, he picked out some. He was also quite taken by it. It was
Hmm.
really good. So the whole subject of their conversation was Satan.
Okay.
Because it
Hmm.
was 666th episode.
Yeah. All right. Makes
But
sense.
it's not anything that you would imagine. It was so good. It was
Hmm.
so really good. Yeah.
Sounds
What
good.
else?
You got all kinds of stuff going on.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
just have work stuff. I've been working hard this last week. I've had a lot of new stuff that we're cranking out, so it's fun.
Yeah. So
But
you've
yeah,
got
but
some
yeah, it eats up all my time.
new challenges.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I guess we get started. It's
Okay.
we're
Done.
6 minutes in here, so
Sounds good. I'll pull up a prayer. We'll get started with prayer.
yes, thank you.
Sure. O Lord Jesus Christ, open the eyes of my heart that I may hear your word and understand and do your will, for I am a sojourner upon the earth. Hide not your commandments from me, but open my eyes that I may perceive the wonders of your law. Speak unto me the hidden and secret things of your wisdom. On you do I set my hope, O my God, that you shall enlighten my mind and understanding with the light of your knowledge, not only to cherish those things which are written, but to do them. For you are the enlightenment of those who lie in darkness, and from you comes every good deed and every gift. Amen.
Amen. Mm. Yeah. That was a good prayer.
Okay, so we will pull up St. Christopher first. I'm going to try this new thing I have here. Did it work? Let's see. Okay. Oh, it did.
You got a
Nice.
new thing?
Yeah, I got a Stream Deck, so I have little buttons down here by my mouse pad where I can share my screen easily.
Oh,
It's
right on.
magic. It's fun. Okay, St. Patrick. Yesterday was St. Patrick's Day, St. Patrick's name day, and so we thought it would definitely be appropriate to share his life.
Mm.
St. Patrick, the enlightener of Ireland, was born around 385, the son of Calpurnius, a Roman decurion, an official responsible for collecting taxes. He lived in the village of Banavem Tabernet, and I'm sorry, I do not speak Celtic. I'm going to mangle these names. I'm sorry, I'm not Irish. I'll just do what I can. He lived in the village of Banavem Tabernet, which may have been located at the mouth of the Severn River in Wales. The district was raided by pirates when Patrick was 16, and he was one of those taken captive. He was brought to Ireland and sold as a slave and was put to work as a herder of swine on a mountain identified with Slemish in uh, in the county of Antrim. During his period of slavery, Patrick acquired a proficiency in the Irish language, which was very useful to him in his later mission. He prayed during his solitude on the mountain and lived this way for 6 years. He had two visions. The first told him he would return to his home. The second told him his ship was ready. Setting off on foot, Patrick walked 200 miles to the coast. There he succeeded in boarding a ship and returned to his parents in Britain. Sometime later, he went to Gaul and studied for the priesthood at Auxerre under Saint Germanus. Eventually, he was consecrated as a bishop and was entrusted with the mission to Ireland, succeeding Saint Palladius, who we heard about last week. Saint Palladius did not achieve much success in Ireland. After about a year, he went to Scotland, where he died in 432. Patrick had a dream in which an angel came to him bearing many letters. Selecting one inscribed, "The Voice of the Irish," he heard the Irish entreating him to come back to them. Although St. Patrick achieved remarkable results in spreading the gospel, he was not the first or only missionary in Ireland. He arrived around 432, though this date is disputed, about a year after St. Palladius began his mission to Ireland. There were also other missionaries who were active on the southeast coast, but it was St. Patrick who had the greatest influence and success in preaching the gospel of Christ. Therefore, he is known as the Enlightener of Ireland. His autobiographical confession tells of many of the trials and disappointments he endured. Patrick had once confided to a friend that he was troubled by a certain sin he had committed before he was 15 years old. The friend assured him of God's mercy and even supported Patrick's nomination as bishop. Later, he turned against him and revealed what Patrick had told him in an attempt to prevent his consecration. Many years later, Patrick still grieved for his dear friend who had publicly shamed him. St. Patrick founded many churches and monasteries across Ireland, but the conversion of the Irish people was no easy task. There was much hostility, and he was assaulted several times. He faced danger and insults, and he was reproached for being a foreigner and a former slave. There was also a very real possibility that the pagans would try to kill him. Despite many obstacles, he remained faithful to his calling, and he baptized many people into Christ. The saint's epistle to Coroticus is also an authentic work. In it, he denounces the attack of Coroticus' men on one of his congregations. The breastplate is also attributed to St. Patrick, which is a beautiful prayer, by the way. I'll pull it up after we share his story. In his writings, we can see St. Patrick's awareness that he had been called by God, as well as his determination and modesty in undertaking his missionary work. He refers to himself as a sinner, the most ignorant and of least account, and as someone who was despised by many. He ascribes his success to God rather than to his own talents. I owe it to God's grace that through me so many people should be born again to him. By the time he established his episcopal see in Armagh in 444, St. Patrick had other bishops to assist him, many native priests and deacons, and he encouraged the growth of monasticism. St. Patrick is often depicted holding a shamrock or with snakes fleeing from him. He used the shamrock to illustrate the doctrine of the Holy Trinity. Its 3 leaves growing out of a single stem helped him to explain the concept of one God in 3 persons. Many people now regard the story of St. Patrick driving all the snakes out of Ireland as having no historical basis. Well, they're party poopers. St. Patrick died on March 17th, 461. Some say 492. There are various accounts of his last days, but they are mostly legendary. Merciu says that no one knows the place where St. Patrick is buried. St. Columba of Iona says that the Holy Spirit revealed to him that Patrick was buried at Saul, the site of his first church. A granite slab was placed at his traditional gravesite in Downpatrick in 1899. So there's the life of St. Patrick.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess it depends on what you would say the snakes are, on whether he drove them out of Ireland.
Yeah. It's too bad that we don't have a more mythological telling of the story.
Yeah, I probably should have spent a little time looking for one.
Okay. It's
Sorry,
all right.
this is a little more of a modern one.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I will pull up. We will make up for it by reading the breastplate of St. Patrick.
Yeah. So good.
Let me pull that up.
Dawn says snakes like the one in the Garden of Eden.
Yeah, basically. Or like the ones, all the pagan snakes. Let's see. Find a good version of it. This will work. Okay, let me share my screen. There we go. Here are the beautiful words of St. Patrick's breastplate prayer. I arise today through a mighty strength, the invocation of the Trinity, through belief in the threeness, through confession of the oneness of the Creator of creation. I arise today through the strength of Christ's birth with his baptism, through the strength of his crucifixion with his burial, through the strength of his resurrection with his ascension, through the strength of his descent for the judgment of doom. I arise today through the strength of the love of cherubim, in the obedience of angels, in the service of archangels, in the hope of resurrection to meet with reward, in the prayers of patriarchs, in the predictions of prophets, in the preaching of God, of apostles, in the faith of confessors, in the innocence of holy virgins, in the deeds of righteous men. I arise today through the strength of heaven, the light of the sun, the radiance of the moon, the splendor of fire, the speed of lightning, the swiftness of wind, the depth of the sea, the stability of the earth, the firmness of rock. I arise today through God's strength to pilot me, God's might to uphold me, God's wisdom to guide me, God's eye to look before me, God's ear to hear me, God's word to speak for me, God's hand to guard me, God's shield to protect me, God's host to save me from snares of devils, from temptation of vices, from everyone who shall wish me ill, afar and near. I summon today all these powers between me and those evils, against every cruel and merciless power that may oppose my body and soul, against incantations of false prophets, against black laws of pagandom, against false laws of heretics, against craft of idolatry, against spells of witches and smiths and wizards, against every knowledge that corrupts man's body and soul. Christ to shield me today against poison, against burning, against drowning, against wounding, so that there may come to me an abundance of reward. Christ with me, Christ before me, Christ behind me, Christ in me, Christ beneath me, Christ above me, Christ on my right, Christ on my left, Christ when I lie down, Christ when I sit down, Christ when I arise, Christ in the heart of every man who thinks of me, Christ in the mouth of everyone who speaks of me, Christ in every eye that sees me, Christ in every ear that hears me. I arise today through a mighty strength, the invocation of the Trinity, through belief in the threeness, through confession of the oneness of the Creator of creation.
You know, I've heard that before, but I just realized I wrote a poem in 2022. It's not as long. But it says, in the morning I rise, seeking your face I rise. As I look to the hills I rise. In the valley of death I rise. I see the heavens I rise. I touch the stars I rise.
Sounds related.
Yeah, and I didn't know anything about St. Patrick then.
Mhm.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Okay, well, I found a little more mythical version of the life of Saint Columba, so this should be good. And it's got pictures.
Let's go,
It's got visual aids.
Mr. Turner, welcome. And Upcycle, thank you so much. Dawn. Yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah, it's a good way to start the morning. That's a really nice morning prayer. That's a very beautiful way to start the morning. It instills a lot of hope. You know, it's very comforting. It's a very comforting prayer. Are we ready for Life of Saint Columba?
Oh yeah.
Let's do it. Okay. This is the first icon that this was the first Orthodox icon I ever got, actually, was St. Columba. When my wife got in a bidding war with this other lady for a basket of Celtic Orthodox goods, this icon was part of it. There was a stained glass cross in there that she fell in love with, and she wanted it. So she didn't care about what else was in there. So I got the Irish whiskey and I got the icon of St. Columba. And
And
I
you
also
can,
got the Book of Celts, which was
oh,
great. But she did get the, and then we put the cross up in a window we have above our door. So I got that too, basically indirectly.
it's funny because I
Oh, go
didn't,
ahead. Sorry.
well, just like I didn't realize that it was St. Patrick's Day yesterday.
Oh, yes.
And I was working here on my wool, and suddenly I had this inclination to look for. I want a Triskelion pendant,
Oh, yeah.
and yeah. So I'm just thinking about it now. It was St. Patrick's Day, and I was feverishly looking at all these Irish jeweler websites, and
Well, there you go.
I didn't even know it was St. Patrick's Day. Like,
Yeah, the Enlightener of Ireland, and now we're going to read about the Enlightener of Scotland. So more British Isles uh, saints.
and isn't this the saint that St. Oswald's head is buried with? St. Columba?
Yes, correct.
Mhm. Yeah. Okay.
Venerable Columba, whose name means dove, is perhaps the greatest of all Celtic saints. This man of God was born in the year 521 and reposed in the Lord on June 9th, 597. The founder of the great and famous monastery on Iona, along with numerous other monastic communities and churches, St. Columba has for 14 centuries been greatly venerated by many Christians as the enlightener of Scotland, a co-patron of Ireland on par with Saints Patrick and Bridget, and the spiritual father of a host of churches throughout Europe. We have a very trustworthy and detailed account of the life, achievements, miracles, visions, and prophecies of this celebrated saint in the work called The Life of St. Columba, written in Latin at the turn of the 7th century by the Venerable Adomnan, the ninth abbot of Iona, who is a much venerated saint himself. There were numerous later biographies of Columba written before and after the Norman conquest, with varying degrees of authenticity. He is praised in the work A Miracle of Columcille, composed at the beginning of the 7th century, and other early works. The Venerable Bede of Jarrow wrote about St. Columba, among other saints, in his History of the English Church and People. The Irish saint named Dallan Forgaill, who for part of his life was blind, composed the eulogy to St. Columba. A great number of traditions related to the name of Columba exist in Irish and Scottish Gaelic folklore. St. Ethne's supposed grave in Scotland. I'm not going to try that one, sorry. The future saint was descended from the kin of Canail, a branch of the ruling O'Neill dynasty in Ireland. His parents' names were Fedlimid and Aithne. Notably, his mother Aithne was locally venerated as a saint. She was buried on the isle referred to in early sources as Hinba, which has not yet been identified. Most historians suggest it was the uninhabited isle of Aileach in Naom, meaning Holy Island, in the Inner Hebrides, situated at the west of Scotland between Mull and Argyll. This isle boasts several beehive cells, chapels, crosses, an underground storeroom, and the graveyard of an Irish monastery, probably founded by St. Brendan of Clonfert, as early as the 530s, who we've also talked about. If this can be confirmed, then it is the oldest surviving church construction in Britain. The supposed grave of Aithne is marked there. This is St. Columba's Church in Garton, Donegal. Shortly before Columba's birth, his mother had a prophetic dream. An angel first gave her a splendid tunic, and then took it back and stretched it out over the earth. The holy man of God was born in Garton, in what is now County Donegal, and it was by the command of an angel that he was given the name Columba, signifying his dove-like simplicity and meekness. It was clear from his infancy that the saint of God was destined to serve the church. He was raised in chastity by the presbyter and tutor uh, Cruithnican, living at the church from childhood. Afterwards, Columba, like other outstanding saints of the Irish Church, known as the 12 Apostles of Ireland, studied at the monastery of Clonard under its founder, the holy abbot Finian. According to some traditions, he may have also studied at Moville Monastery, founded by Saint Finian of Moville. It was at Clonard in 551 that he was ordained priest. In the year 546, the venerable man founded a church and monastery at Dare, which is now spelled Derry, now in County Derry. The foundation of the Irish monasteries of Durrow in 556 in Offaly, Kells in County Meath, and Swords, County Fingal, a holy well that gushed forth there in Columba's time still exists, is traditionally attributed to him. The venerable man dedicated all his energies to the establishment and consolidation of the church in Ireland and Scotland. In 563, according to another version in 565, Columba, accompanied by 12 disciples, left Ireland forever and sailed to Scotland for the preaching of the Holy Gospel. There are a number of later traditions explaining his motives for leaving his motherland. They claim that he did it as a voluntary exile for Christ's sake, or for supporting his Irish compatriots living in the northwestern part of Scotland, who had founded a colony and later kingdom of Dalriada there, or even as self-punishment for a misdeed in his youth, namely that he once copied a very beautiful psalter and refused to give it back, which resulted in a battle between monasteries. On the eve of Pentecost, the saint of God landed in the first piece of land where his native Ireland was no more in sight. It was the small isle of Iona in the Inner Hebrides, approximately 3 miles long and 1 mile wide, to the west off the coast of Mull, situated in the kingdom of Dalriada, which corresponds to today's Argyll and Bute area. The name Iona may be of Old Norse origin. Its first form was simply I, meaning island. It was, and still is, an exceptionally beautiful isle, though at that time it was deserted and windswept. A local ruler granted this island to Columba, and he built a church and a monastery on it, making it his main base. Orthodoxy in the Celtic tradition was to be spread from this great center throughout Scotland, and afterwards to many parts of England and the continent through the labors of St. Columba and his numerous disciples and followers over several generations. This was the catalyst for the conversion of the Picts, Scots, and Northern British. St. Columba became the first abbot of Iona and ruled it till the end of his life. He spent the rest of his life in Scotland, only occasionally making journeys to Ireland for important matters. Living on Iona, the holy man prayed, read, copied manuscripts, taught, and labored together with all his monks. Though he was the abbot, he carried out any hard work in the fields as any simple monk would, showing a great humility. He would carry heavy sacks with grain from the fields and bring flour from the mill to the kitchen. His ascetic life was so austere that it seemed to exceed human strength. The saint kept a strict fast, spent nights in prayer, slept on a bare rock, and had a stone as his pillow. What is believed to be his stone pillow is kept on Iona to this day. Despite his extremely ascetic way of life, Father Columba was filled with the joy of the Holy Spirit, and was always courteous and benevolent to everyone. This is St. Columba's stone pillow at Iona Museum. Adamnan wrote that he, Columba, had an angelic face, was of an excellent nature, perfect and polished in speech, holy in deed, great in counsel, and loving to all. Tall, thin, and physically strong, Columba spoke with a strong and ringing voice. A great scholar and preacher, wonder worker and visionary, Columba was quite stern and hot-tempered in his youth, but with time he softened, becoming gentle and merciful. His humility and kindness extended not only to the monastery brethren, but to every stranger. A true faster and man of prayer, Father Columba always shared the joys and sorrows of all his neighbors. Adamnan and other biographers in one voice evidenced that this ascetic, pure in body and chaste in his mind, poured out abundant spiritual joy on everybody, being a chosen vessel of the Holy Spirit himself. Taking compassion on a robber who intended to kill the seals that the monastery brethren ate, Columba began to give him food. All biographers portray him as a man of extraordinary wisdom and a good teacher of his monks. Well versed in the Holy Scriptures, Father Columba knew Greek, studied chronology and astronomy, in particular with respect to the calculation of the Paschalia. He took special care for the proper celebration of church services and the Eucharist. Once St. Brendan of Clonfert saw a ball of radiant fire above Columba's head when the latter was serving the liturgy. A dominion called him a pillar of many churches, the father of many monasteries. Perhaps Columba worked out and introduced a rule for Iona and other monasteries he had founded, though we know very few details of it. However, the surviving written evidence mentions the sources that Columba especially loved, the rules of St. Basil the Great and the writings of St. John Cassian. Apart from Iona, Columba was head of daughter monasteries and hermitages on the western coast of Scotland. Hinba, Maglung on Tiree, the most westerly of the Inner Hebrides, which supplied Iona with grain, Sella Diuna and others. He and or his disciples also founded communities and cells on Jura, Skye, Ellen, which is not yet identified, and other isles, and spent time on them for quiet prayer and contemplation. According to some information, Columba himself built a great many churches and blessed 300 wells, baptized and cast out demons from hundreds of people. At Columba's monasteries, the communal life of the majority of monks was combined with the eremitic life of some experienced ascetics. Adamnan points out the most important feature of cenobitic life on Iona, life in true obedience to the spiritual mentor. Only adult men were tonsured monks on Iona, though very young disciples and novices were allowed to live at the monastery as well. The community was governed by the abbot, who appointed the abbots of daughter monasteries. And this is a text from the Katak of Columba. St. Columba was an excellent scribe and created many manuscripts. He compiled a hymnal for the week, and according to his biographers, he was the author of commentaries on the Bible, prayers, hymns, and poems, in addition to the rule mentioned above. But the most outstanding is, beyond all doubt, the Katak of Columba, a splendid copy of the Gospel on vellum, created by Columba himself before 561. This great relic, the earliest Irish manuscript of this kind, still exists and is kept at the Royal Irish Academy in Dublin. Columba more than once visited monasteries in Dalriada and the Pictland. Iona monks crossed the sea in small wooden vessels and oracles, simple round rowing boats made of woven sticks covered with animal skins. When St. Cormac, a spiritual friend of Columba, with his companions, in the quest of the desert in the ocean, reached the North Orkneys, Columba saw in spirit that they were in imminent danger, so he asked a Pictish ruler to show them hospitality. This way the holy man observed in spirit all the travels and activities of his disciples, even in faraway lands. As soon as he saw any of them sinning or in trouble, he began to pray zealously for them. This spiritual vision enabled him to govern many monasteries from a distance. In all things, life in Iona and other of Columba's monasteries resembled a true family with a father and children. The venerable man instructed monks and laypeople alike, in some cases even prevented the breakup of families, and he never turned down anyone coming to him and seeking his advice. He was concerned for the observance of church discipline, censured clerics who boasted of their riches, was favorably disposed toward all who were zealous in doing penance, praised all who displayed compassion and hospitality to others. As can be seen in the lives of great many Orthodox saints and elders both in the East and West, Columba's life contains many examples of his clairvoyance, how the faithful flocked to him, asked for his prayers, consolation, and counsel in various life situations. The saint would often meet people standing on his knees, washed their feet, prayed for them with abundant tears. He had a rare gift of tears, and prayed for sinners like a loving father, and did not leave anyone unconsoled. The lives describe how a column or a cloud of unearthly light surrounded the Holy Father during his solitary prayer. how he conversed with angels and other holy men in spirit, how many secrets of the past and of the future were revealed to him by God. He predicted the day of his repose and many other events, how he explained difficult places of the Holy Scripture to people. St. Columba's prayer was pleasing to God. Those suffering were healed. Miracles were performed even from the things and items blessed by him. The man of God maintained friendly relations with many other church figures and ascetics of that time, Saints Kenneth, Comgall, Brendan, Drosten, and Kentigern. He instructed rulers, princes, and members of royal families, in some cases preventing internal wars. Due to Columba's influence, the church in Scotland became as strong as that of Ireland. By tradition, bishops obeyed Abbot Columba, and after his death, Scottish hierarchs continued to obey abbots of Iona. His missionary work among the northern Picts was successful. Pictish pagan priests, the Druids, despite all their attempts, could do Columba no harm. Many Picts had been so rooted in paganism that they initially met the good news with hostility, but with time the situation changed. Through the efforts of Iona monks and other Irish missionaries, most Picts were baptized. Eventually, the supreme ruler of the Picts, King Brude, was baptized by Columba in the 9th year of his reign. Ionan monks traveled to the north and west, east and south, preaching the gospel, sowing the seeds of orthodoxy and the Irish monastic tradition. Thus they reached the Orkneys and Iceland, England, and continental Western and Central Europe. Iona became the spiritual capital of Scotland and the seedbed of missionary work thanks to Columba, whose influence in the establishment of orthodoxy in the Celtic tradition in many parts of Europe cannot be overestimated. Ionan monks were fearless and modest soldiers of Christ who wandered for Christ's sake through the endless ocean, through mountains and valleys, bogs and forests, often living amidst hostile pagans. But wherever they came, they brought the good news and joy of Christ with them, and in many cases left humble cells, chapels, beautiful manuscripts, and bells after them. On the sites of the cells of many of these saints rose the future great centers of monasticism, learning, and whole cities in present-day Europe, or in present-day France, Belgium, Switzerland, and other lands, most of which stand to this day. Such was the spirit of the Celtic monks, spiritual children of blessed Columba. The man of God had to solve secular affairs as well. Some sources claim that he even stood up for the rights of women in Ireland. He prevented the expulsion of bards from Ireland and protected their traditional organization. Due to his role, many well-educated lay people from all strata appeared in Irish Christian society. It was through the authority of Columba that in the Synod of 575, the Scottish king became independent from the Irish suzerain. The great authority of Columba and Iona contributed to the custom of crowning every new Scottish ruler on Iona. Venerable Columba loved and cared not only for people but also nature, seeing God's creation in everything. Despite being busy with praying, copying, or teaching, he often found time to look after the plants that the brethren grew for subsistence. It was said that during the building of Derry Monastery, at the insistence of Columba, the plan was altered so that they did not have to fell trees. Numerous stories testified to Columba's affection not only for people, but also for mute animals. Once he saw a young crane that landed on Iona exhausted and could hardly move. He took pity on it and ordered one of his novices to take care of it and let it stay at the monastery until it gained strength. Another story tells that the monks were annoyed by the barking of seals on the shore during Sunday services. The saint one day came out of the church, approached the animals, instructed them, and they instantly jumped into the water and never barked loudly on Sundays after that. Here are some examples of Columba's miracles taken from Adamnan's life. Once, returning from the country of the Picts, at his prayers, contrary winds were changed into fair. In that same country, he took a white stone from the river and blessed it for working of certain cures, and that stone, contrary to nature, floated like an apple when placed in water. In the same country, he performed a still greater miracle by raising to life the dead child of a humble believer. When he was still a young deacon in Ireland, The wine required for sacred mysteries failed, and he changed by his prayer pure water into true wine. He often saw, by the revelation of the Holy Spirit, the souls of just men carried by angels to the highest heavens, and reprobates he frequently saw being carried to hell by demons. Once local inhabitants complained about the profound bitterness of the fruit on a tree that grew south of the Derry monastery. The saint blessed the tree, and it produced only sweet fruit henceforth. Another time he gave his monks 3 measures of barley, and ordered them to take it to one poor man, so that he could sow it. The disciples obeyed, and against the law of nature, the poor man sowed barley after the midsummer, and gathered it ripe as soon as early in August. During a pestilence in Ireland, Columba distributed blessed bread and ordered the infected people and cows to be sprinkled with the water he had blessed, and all were cured. A virgin living in Ireland broke her thigh. She lay and invoked the name of St. Columba. He heard her prayers from many miles away, ordered his novices to sail and give her holy water, and she was healed. He also predicted that virgin would live for another 23 years. Once Columba blessed a lump of salt and gave it to a man named Colga, who passed it to Colga's daughter, who had been his nurse. Soon after that, a fire began in her village, but she was not affected, as the salt was not consumed by fire. One day Columba was traveling, a couple came up to him and asked him to baptize their baby. There was no water nearby. The saint prayed before a rock, and a stream gushed forth from it. He baptized the baby and predicted that this boy would indulge himself in carnal pleasures in his youth, but would become a genuine Christian soldier in mature age, which would do many works and die in a very advanced age. Many good works and die in a very advanced age. In Pictland, the saint blessed a poisonous fountain that locals worshipped as if it were a god, and whoever drank from it was infected. Henceforth its water became wholesome. Once a young man who was carrying a pail with milk from the farm home asked Columba to bless him as he passed by his cell. The saint made the sign of the cross in the air, and the lid of the pail fell and broke, while most of the milk spilled out. The saint explained that the man, out of negligence, had forgotten to make the sign of the cross over the pail before pouring milk into it, and the demon that was sitting inside it had now run away, unable to bear the cross. Then he asked the boy to come nearer, blessed him, and his pail became full of milk again. The saint blessed a very poor but hospitable man, who out of kindness treated him with all he could offer, and predicted that his livestock would multiply 100-fold. And he predicted to one very rich but stingy man, who refused to give him shelter, that he would lose all his riches and end his days in misery, and both prophecies were fulfilled. Remarkably, it is the life of St. Columba where the so-called Loch Ness Monster was first mentioned. When the blessed man was living for some days in the province of the Picts, he was obliged to cross the river Nessa, and when he reached the bank, he saw some inhabitants burying an unfortunate man who had been a short time before seized as he was swimming and bitten the most severely by a monster that lived in the water. The blessed man, on hearing this, directed one of his companions to swim over and row across the coble that was moored at the farther bank. The latter obeyed without the least delay, taking off his clothes except his tunic. But the monster, lying on the bottom of the stream, was only roused for more prey. As the man was swimming, it gave an awful roar and darted after him, with its mouth wide open. The blessed man raised his hand and formed the saving sign of the cross, and commanded the ferocious monster, "Thou shalt go no further, nor touch the man. Go back with all speed." The monster was terrified and fled, as if it had been pulled back with ropes. When the saint's faithful attendant Diormit was sick even unto death, Columba besought the Lord not to take his soul whilst Columba was himself alive. Whilst Columba was himself alive. And indeed, Diormit recovered and even outlived the saint by many years. Columba liberated a Scottish slave girl from a druid named Droichen, who held her captive. When the Druid did not heed Columba's warnings, he was stricken by a severe illness. Only then did he repent and let the girl go, and was cured. When Columba, with several assistants, first arrived to the Pictish king Brood, the latter behaved haughtily and refused to let him in. All of a sudden, the gate to the royal palace opened on its own accord before the man of God. Once the king learned about it, he changed his ways and held the saint of God with great reverence until his death. That was a
Jeremy,
lot. Yeah,
how
that
long
just
is
goes
it?
on. Yeah, no, I know. This is really long. Okay, we'll
Do you
jump ahead
want
here
to?
a little bit.
I was just going to suggest maybe you put the link in the chat if
Yes,
anybody wants to continue
I know it's long.
reading
I'm sorry.
all
Forgive
of
me.
these examples because they're really fascinating. And then maybe we can look at the pictures.
In
How's that
pictures,
sound?
there's our churches, St. Columba churches all over the place. Yeah, this goes on. This is much longer than I expected. Sorry.
Okay.
Even London can boast a church dedicated to St. Columba. It stands in Pont Street and is one of the two Presbyterian parish churches in the British capital. Holy Father Columba of Iona, pray to God for us.
Mm.
I will share the link. You're right, that started going long. There was a lot of miracles too. I was like, whoa. Okay.
Oh,
It
that's
didn't like me
amazing.
posting. I wasn't
Welcome.
able
Nice to
to
have
post.
you here. As a daughter of a McCollum who left the Isle of Mull 400 years ago. Very cool.
Oh
McCollum is the
wow.
son of Column. If I need a patron saint, I guess I know who to call on. That's awesome.
Yeah, St. Columba.
Nice to see you here. Yeah. Yeah, St. Columba is quite the character. He's very well known all over the British Isles, and as is St. Oswald, and they're together.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's very cool. Thank you, Jeremy. That was awesome. I love
Sure.
those that are heavy with anecdotes and all that
Yeah.
kind of. So there, Mull has an Orthodox monastery on it, right? Mull Monastery.
Yes.
You want to have a look at that?
Sure. I will pull it up. Images. Let me share my screen. Yeah, it's right on the coast.
Is that it?
Maybe not.
No, that doesn't
No,
look like
sorry. That's not it.
no.
This is it.
Yeah.
It's not a
Yes.
very good picture.
So
So
they called
one.
you read I think you read it in St. Columba's story. The what's the phrase they used for the ocean was
I don't know.
I don't know, the desert. So like in Ireland and in the UK, these monks were very what do you call it? Influenced by the Philokalia. Obviously, it says here that he was reading St. Basil the Great and St. John Cassian. And
Yeah.
they sought out a desert, but of course, there's no desert in the British Isles, right? It's pretty
Right.
green. So they chose the ocean as their desert. And I think it's St. Columba. He used to stand in the water up to his neck for many hours and pray. If it wasn't St. Columba, then it would have been what's the other guy? I can't remember his name, but I'm pretty sure it was St. Columba. Um, yeah, so that was their version of the desert, where the desert fathers went into the desert to live.
Yeah.
These guys went. They sought out fairly inhospitable places to live. And that
Yeah.
was their desert. So there's a kind of an interesting connection to the Desert Fathers there, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Let me see if I can find Iona. Let's see what it looks like.
Iona, isn't that also? Oh no, I don't know.
Yeah, it's okay. I'll share my screen. Mhm. So yeah, this is a good one. There's not much there. That is pretty deserty, even though it's green,
Yep.
and
Yeah.
and especially eating seals. That is also an aesthetic effort. That's pretty.
Yeah. So maybe you could. Oh, it's Saint Cuthbert, who used to pray standing in the sea.
I see.
Yeah, and the sea otters would dry his feet with their fur.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's Iona. This is the monastery that St. Columba founded.
There you
St.
go.
Columba Hotel.
Yeah. So go to that map there that was there.
I didn't see a map.
Right
Oh,
there. Well, one of
yeah.
those. I'm just curious if they list all those monasteries. Well, there's some of the names. Iona, Kells Armagh is where St. Patrick was from. Remember? That was in his
Mhm.
name.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's see. Oh, by that's not a helpful
No.
map. Anyway, yeah.
Very cool. Great.
Oh, yeah. Good stuff.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, I'm going to throw a link in
Cool.
to the chat. If anybody wants to join, they're more than welcome. The drill around here is we can talk about anything as long as it's, wholesome and edifying.
Although I don't always follow that rule. Forgive me.
Just depends on who's watching here. Watch my words. Careful with my words.
Yeah, the AI beast is watching.
Yes. Did I already mention to you that I watched that I did say that at the beginning, right? That I took in this seminar with McGilchrist and Desmet.
Yes. Yeah.
They had an
And I
interesting.
looked him up. He's the one who was the one who came up with the mass formation theory.
Yes.
That's so I'm familiar with him now. Once I
Yeah.
realized that, I was like, oh yeah, okay, I know what that is.
Yeah, I mean it's not really a new theory, but he gave it he connected it to modern totalitarianism. Oh,
Mm.
he's pouring his tea. Yeah. So because mass formation has happened in the past. There's some really crazy ones. There was a dancing frenzy
Oh
in
yeah,
in was it
France,
France?
wasn't it?
I think
Yeah,
it
I
was
thought it was France.
France.
Yeah.
Let me see here.
I mean, where else would it be?
Here we go. Dancing Mania of 1518. Here we go. So, what do I have to press again to make my screen make it bigger? Oh, let me go over here first. Present. Oh, there. So, how do I make this bigger
And
again?
then Command Plus when you're on that window.
Oh, yeah. There. Is
There
that
you
good?
go. Yep.
Yeah. Somewhere between 50 and 400 people took to dancing for weeks. It was considered a plague. There's all these theories
Yeah,
about.
people died from it, from exhaustion.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There. Do you know what ergot is? Ergot is a um, fungus that grows
Fungus.
on I think it's barley or
Hmm.
wheat, one or the other,
Yeah.
and it's very hallucinogenic, and it'll also kill you. Uh, yeah, so he refers to this dancing plague as an early form of rye. Yes, thank you, Don. That's what it is, rye, not wheat or barley. That's wrong.
Mhm.
Wrong. Um, he refers to that as a kind of mass formation, right?
Mm.
Um, and there's historically there's lots of that, but what's new to modernity is totalitarianism. In the past, they had tyrants and dictators, but they didn't have totalizing systems.
Mm.
And we all know the more recent ones: communism, fascism, and so on. Um, and according to him, we're in the middle of it again. So yeah, and Hannah Arendt made the point that it would be whatever came next would be a soft totalitarianism in the form of tired bureaucrats. So
Yeah.
yeah, so that's
Accurate.
kind of what makes his ideas interesting, because he's there's also a criteria for mass formation that
Mm.
needs to be in place. Um, and we've got all that criteria taken care of right now. I can't remember them all. I
Mm.
remember free floating anxiety. um, that's about it at the moment. Sorry.
Yeah.
But yeah, just a lack of social cohesion. People feel disconnected.
Yeah. Yeah.
Individualism. Yeah, but his book is really, really good. Like it's he. I would call him a mystic more than anything, if that makes any sense. And whenever I recommend his book, people kind of roll their eyes and you know don't think about it much
Yeah.
because of the title. But he has such a unique approach to these things. So, and one of his main ideas is that the reason that we're in the state that we're in is because we live in a mechanistic worldview, and we need to live in a sacramental worldview. So,
Yes.
yeah. So him and the Jokers are just like super happy to talk to each other. Hello, Eugene.
What's
Hello,
funny?
guys.
If oh, this isn't Wikipedia. Sorry, never mind. Um,
Funny.
yeah, it was funny because it didn't list his name, right? It didn't list his book, his main book,
Hmm.
but I'm not even seeing his name on Wikipedia, so that's fun.
Oh no, they wouldn't like him at all.
Yeah.
They
So
actually mentioned Wikipedia. He mentioned Wikipedia today. He said he was referring to something and said, you could look it up. It was just some random little thing,
yeah.
historical something or other. I don't know if it was an item or whatever. He said you could look it up. It's one of the few things on Wikipedia that's accurate.
Ah, yeah. Exactly.
So how are you doing, Eugene?
I'm doing good. Let's see. Just been doing a little planting, taking care of my newly sprouted potatoes.
Oh, you got them in, hey?
Nice.
Yeah,
Yeah, cool.
but it's
It
been
looks
so
like you have the weight
windy.
of the world on your head.
Yes, yes, yes. And my wife and I actually started watching a movie about St. Patrick yesterday. Well, actually
Oh,
Hey.
rewatching it because we watched
cool.
several times before.
What movie
And
is it? Is it available like on YouTube
it
or?
is on YouTube. Yes, it's
Okay.
an old one.
Yeah.
It's called Saint Patrick, the Irish Legend.
Okay. I'll check
Yeah,
it out.
and sure.
I watched a
And
great series with Peter Brown on some of the Celtic saints. He covers, of course, St. Patrick.
uh, oh.
Um,
Yeah, this one is probably the only one that I've seen on him. And I read his confession a little bit after I watched the movie.
okay.
Is it Confession or Confessions? I forgot. But in the movie, there's a really interesting episode, and it really, really touched me. There's many episodes that really touched me, but one was that when after he got captured and sold into slavery, he was really hit in the bottom. It's like he to really show what's happening in his soul. Like he's this rich
Hmm.
boy, and now he's like nothing. And one day he goes out and he prays, and he sees this light. It just touches him, this heavenly light. And then this next episode, he goes back into the village after. Well, basically, he just got transformed by that light. He goes back into the village, and he gets stopped by his master. And the master says, "Why are you smiling? You're not allowed to smile. I mean, a happy slave. What? I mean, am I being too soft?"
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, in front of all the other slaves, he just starts speaking to him like he's like he's not my master. He's like a person.
Wow.
And then the master says to his servants, like, go kill this slave. And they show the eyes of all the slaves around him, and they're like, oh my goodness, that's the end of Patrick.
Yeah.
And then they show Patrick's eyes, and he's like, he doesn't even move his eyebrow. It's like it's clear that he hasn't got a hint of fear,
Wow.
in him. And the master sees that. His master sees that, and he says, "Stop! I don't want to waste my money. I'd rather use him as a slave." And then one of the slaves says, "I mean, did you know that he could kill you?" And then Patrick goes, "Yes, I did." "And how could you, speak to him like this?" And he says, "I don't know." And this was what really blew my mind,
Right.
because that's what I love about these stories about all the saints, because they don't really know
Yeah.
how they're doing what they're doing.
Hmm.
It's like right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing,
Right.
and it can't be the other way around. you know so
You
powerful.
know, I talked with Jordan Daniel Wood the other day about George MacDonald's imagination essay. And what you're just saying there reminded me of this. We talked about it at length, actually. Um, there's a line in this essay that is just so amazing. You'll love it. Um, it says here, he's talking about thoughts. Where do your thoughts come from? Like he says, they suddenly appear in luminous writing upon the wall of his consciousness. The man, any man. Can it be correct then to say that he created them? Nothing less so, as it seems to us. But can we not say that they are the creation of the unconscious portion of his nature? Yes, provided we can understand that which is the individual, the man, can know and not know that it knows,
Hmm.
can create and yet be ignorant that virtue has gone out of it.
Hmm.
I'll just read that last bit again. So good. Yes, provided we can understand that which is the individual, the man, can know and not know that it knows, can create and yet be ignorant that virtue has gone out of it.
This is very good. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
There was related. It came up when you were talking, Eugene. There was a story I heard recently about there was a guy was talking to an abbot at a monastery, and they were talking about the young converts and the zeal and some of the the good part of that, but there's also issues with that. And the abbot said, "Yeah," he said, "I see a lot of these young men, and they read about the saints, and the saints are, you know, being elevated in prayer, right? They're levitating in prayer." And he's like, and they all come to me and ask, "How do you do that? How do I do that?" And he said the problem is they're looking at the saint, and then they're looking at themselves. And he said, but what they don't understand is that saint is only looking at God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like Peter walking on the water. I mean, looking into the eyes of Jesus. That's the only thing he's thinking about. He's totally ignorant of what's going on,
Yeah.
of how he's doing
Mhm.
it.
Yeah, there's something though, like Jordan said about that, what I read there, that is Jordan put it, he said salutary. Like it's encouraging. You can know and not know that you know.
Mm.
And virtue flows out of you without you knowing it. And my response to him was, that's what saints do.
Mm.
And the interesting thing about that is that they don't know that virtue flows out of them because of their humility. Okay? Cassandra. That's probably because Jeremy read for so freaking long.
I'm sorry. Forgive me. The
Just
Life
kidding.
of St. Columba was compelling.
It's the
There's a
never-ending
lot of
novel.
miracles in there. Yeah,
I was looking at that little slider on the side, and I'm like, is that
I
gonna
know.
go
That's
in
me
bottom?
too. I was like, oh, this is getting long.
But
At the same
anyway,
time.
and so what I was going to say about the saints is that the virtue, they don't know that virtue flows out of them because of their humility. And because of their humility, they feel like the chiefest of sinners. Like when you think about the story of St. Columba and how he felt bad for causing that battle between monasteries because it took was it a Psalter?
Psalter, yeah.
Yeah. And never returned it. He worked hard his whole life, and when you were reading that part, I was thinking, yeah, he was dealing with all that guilt and, of having to, he felt like the chiefest of sinners. And I was talking to another friend today about this because the closer you approach holiness, the more difficult it is to, it's a paradox, actually.
Yeah.
It's not like you can't, you never truly know your own holiness because of your humility, because the closer you get to it, the more humble the humbled you are, right, through your own sin.
Yeah.
And I think that this is what tears of joy and sorrow are, right?
Yeah, joyful sorrow, right? And also like there's the I'll take that as a compliment, Cassandra. I hope it was a compliment, but if it wasn't, that's good too. Because my kids definitely get bored and fall asleep, and my wife's just like, enough. It was just a quick little side note from my own life. I was telling my wife today, I was like, I said, this might be kind of a dark thought, but I don't think it really is. I said, in case something were to happen to me, there's a lot of nice live streams that you and my daughter could listen to, afterward. And she goes, yeah, that's a nice thought. She goes, and it's really nice because you're not talking about stupid things. Like would actually be enjoyable to listen to.
And she can shut it off whenever she wants.
Yeah, and I just sat there, and she's like, like philosophy. You're not talking about philosophy. It's really nice. You're talking about lives of the saints. I like it. So it's funny. I didn't mean to sidetrack the conversation, but because it is sitting in that space of, and as you move closer to the light, your own darkness is revealed. And I've heard as well that God hides most of the healing he's doing. He hides it from us so that we don't become prideful, right? He hides the changes that we're going through, and he hides what's being done, and that won't be fully revealed until we die.
Yeah, that's also, I think that's a blind spot on our side of it too, because you ask a lot of people. I was talking to Rigel recently. I think Ron Copperman was talking about it today. Stuff like that. They pray for a change in their lives, and then shit hits the fan. And they never actually realize when they're in the middle of it that this is precisely what they prayed for. Until later. And then they get the retrospect they need to be able to go, oh. And Rilke talks about that. He says, why do you worry about where you're going and where it's coming from when what you have prayed for is nothing but change? And now that you are in the midst of transition, right? So that's kind of what we do when we're in the midst of the transition. We go, oh my God, why is this happening? Where is this coming from? But we forget already that we asked for change. We prayed for a change.
I kind of joked with my boss today. He was off to a meeting, and I knew it was a bit of a difficult meeting that he was heading to. And I said, I'll pray for you. I said, I'll pray for God's mercy for you. And he said, thank you. And I said, but I can't promise. I said, but I have no idea what that looks like. That might not be, it might not make the meeting go easy. He just laughed. Like, I'll pray for mercy, but
when I pray for my kids, I sometimes catch myself thinking, but what if God actually takes it seriously? And then well, please go gentle on them.
Yeah.
Until I was like, oh no.
My favorite prayer for my kids is I just pray for the Holy Theotokos to put her veil over them.
Oh yeah.
I just say, Most Holy Theotokos, please put your veil over my daughter. So, I like that one.
Well, sometimes actually when I pray for them, I do have a feeling that they need some fanning of their own BS, in their face.
Yeah.
Fortunately, that's unavoidable because we all create that BS, right?
Yeah.
And when it fans into our face, we just realize how deep we were in that stuff.
One of the things, I mean, as a physical parent, like as the parent of my children, if they were going somewhere where I knew they were going to be facing some critical decision making, I never gave them a list of things they shouldn't do. I always told them to do the right thing. As they were leaving the house, I'd say, have fun and do the right thing.
That's good. I like it.
Yeah. Because, well, I'll tell you what, when my parents told me not to do things, I just kind of wrote them all down and did them. Thanks for the suggestions. Yeah. Yeah. It's hard to, like I've got 2 young grandsons, and watching their moms have to, like when the babies first stand up and they're wobbling and holding on to things, and then without thinking they let go and fall. If you keep, holding them up, they'll keep letting go and not thinking because they know you're going to catch them. But if you let them fall once, the next time they stand up on a piece of furniture, which will be like 3 minutes later, you can see them go and then have a second thought and hold on a little longer, right? And it's the hard. I watch my daughter-in-law and my daughter when this is happening with their little guys, and they just want to, you know. Yeah, it's really hard to watch that happen. Oh, that's not so great, Cassandra. Yeah.
Yeah, I can relate to that.
That's a little paralysis there. Paralysis of analysis. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly, Joy.
Yeah, it's difficult. Yeah, you got to be careful what you pray for. I
No,
read
don't.
of a. I read
Don't
of
be
a.
careful.
What's
Don't be
that?
careful. I said,
No,
don't be
I'm
careful
kidding.
what you pray for.
Yeah, just go for it. No, I read of I can't remember who it was, but he was saying he prayed for God to so he was a chanter, and he would travel. It was a life. This is from the life of a saint, and it was when he was young. He was a chanter, and he would go to different parishes and chant the liturgies, and that was basically his job. And he had a beautiful voice, and people would come from all over to come to the liturgy just to hear him chant. And one day he prayed that God would remove. He said, "If there's any obstacle in my life between you and me, please remove it." And he woke up the next day and he couldn't sing anymore.
Mm.
And it lasted for like 10 years that he couldn't sing. He could speak, but he couldn't sing.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah. Because he was starting to get attached to that idea. Yeah. Of being a good
The
singer.
identity or something.
Yeah. In Tolkien's fairy tale, the last one he wrote, the Smith of Wooden
Wooten Major.
Wooden Major.
We got to do that one, by the way.
Yeah, we got to do that one. It's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah.
So basically, there's this magical star that is like a gift that a person gets. I'm not going to go into detail, but the interesting thing is that when you have received that gift and it blessed your life and you bless other people with that gift, at the end, you have to give your gift back, sort of. And it's just at the end of the story, the smith has to return the gift. And it was just like, will you return or will you hold on to this gift?
Mm-hmm.
And it's really interesting. When I read that, I like I mean you guys were talking about before I joined totalitarianism and all that kind of stuff that we've been going through recently, and you know it's interesting that that it all ties up to what's in a man, like what is it in me, what is it in me, and I don't really know what is in me until such a moment when I'm asked to give it up, and you know, not hold on to whatever it is. And
Yeah.
it could be really, really different for people. And that's just, I really, really don't know whether I'll be able to give up my most precious thing that I'm asked until the moment that it actually happens.
Sometimes we don't know what our most precious thing is until
Exactly.
someone's trying to take it out of our hands, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I won't get into the details because it's too personal to tell, but I was surprised by what became my most precious thing. I had no idea it was so precious when it was being taken away from me. I didn't know. I thought I actually would have been glad if it was taken away from me, but it wasn't. I wasn't. Yeah. And that was a really humbling moment because there was a lot of resentment tied up in all of it. And Yeah. This is what I was reading from George MacDonald. The man can know and not know that it knows.
Mm.
Right?
Yeah.
Because he talks about um, um, this darkness of consciousness within us where God resides, right? And because he's talking about where do thoughts come from, like where, when you have these thoughts. And like I said earlier to Jeremy, it's encouraging because we want to wallow a bit in the mire, right? We want to feel the pain. We want to roll around in it a little bit because it's actually how most of us feel most of the time about ourselves. But we are also images of God, right? With sparks of divine light inside of us. And I think that's something that we should talk more about because carefully, but we need to talk about it. We need to be aware of the fact that there is a more beautiful story here. you know, I was telling Jordan that I watched a conversation with Michael Levin and Ian McGilchrist. Michael Levin is that scientist, and he's doing research now on the phenomena of, like, you've got this slime mold and it's exhibiting consciousness. At least it is to this scientist. He's presenting it with different problems, mazes even, and it can accomplish them. And but there's also an attractor involved. There's a thing that the slime mold is moving towards, right? And so now he's looking at the reciprocity of that relationship, the power that the attractor is exerting also onto the slime mold and vice versa, right? So and this is like your Jonah thing, Jeremy, right? God makes the whale
Mm-hmm.
and Jonah, and they're always moving towards each other in time, right?
Yeah.
And we don't know that until they meet,
Yeah.
but they were born to meet, you know.
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of Christians call grace. When God is calling you towards something, they call that grace, but it doesn't sound as much as a we're not as the we're not made aware of the fact that it's reciprocal, right? When we talk about grace, because we have to assent to God's grace,
Right.
right? So it's a very similar situation, right? Where God is calling and attracting, but we also have to come into what agreement with God.
Yeah. You have to learn how to say, "May I be blessed."
Yeah, and let it be unto me.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, I was thinking about it in terms of Jesus saying, "Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If any man opens," he's always approaching, right? Or seek and you will find, because you're always being attracted. It's very interesting to think about.
My priest has really he really has shifted to using this approach in teaching us, as far as, instead of battling the passions and fighting the demons and all that stuff, he's like, just go toward Christ. Don't worry about what's behind you or what's holding you down. Just try to move toward Christ more through the day, right? And try to make small movements. And he's like, and that's what you reflect on at the end of the day. Just think of the things you did that would make Christ smile.
Yeah.
The efforts you made to move closer to him, and the time you tried to remember him. And he's like, that is the spiritual life. He's like,
He
don't worry.
always,
And if you make a mistake, like confess it, right? But the spiritual life is moving toward Christ and trying to be filled with love, not battling yourself.
well, Jesus says, I have not come to condemn the world, right?
Yeah.
And all of the encounters that he had with people were opportunities for him to congratulate the tiny little iota of faith that they demonstrated, right? The hem of his garment, help me with my unbelief. I'll take the crumbs from your table. Like we're talking about tiny little bits of faith, right?
Yeah.
And and he raised them up. He
Right.
said, somebody touched me. Why are you here? Right? So, and Zacchaeus, he was
Yeah.
what? He was a wee little man.
Yeah. We have a deacon in our parish who's Zacchaeus, and he's like 6'3". I
Oh,
always tease him. I always go, man, if imagine how tall Jesus was.
well, Jeremy,
And then,
I wanted to say, I really liked what you said about your priest. He must be a really wise man. But at the same time, I kind of felt, I don't know if you remember, I once told you guys about the two tendencies within Russian Orthodoxy in Russia. There's
Hmm.
one that's more toward what they call patristic synthesis or something like that, and the other one is more sociological, like Alexander Min people. But when you were just telling me what your priest said about the spiritual warfare to you, gosh, it almost like moved me to tears because you can't imagine how many my Orthodox friends in Russia actually believe that the way to do spiritual warfare is exactly, think about anything but Christ. Actually, you think about,
Mm.
it's like there's all kinds of uh, people that even push within Orthodoxy, that push this point of view that you need to do some sort of self-flagellation, like you need to
Mm.
like think about like this is really really common to think about your sin, so you weep over your sin day and night, and that's what's going to get you closer to God.
mm,
And I really honestly could never understand it. And then when I actually started reading Min and some sociology of the Russian sociology of the 19th century, and then I realized that the Orthodox monks and church fathers actually taught and lived a very different type of
Yeah.
Christianity.
mm,
Especially when I read the pater we call it pathetic, the life of the holy fathers,
Hmm.
desert fathers. It's they are all about, like, don't focus on yourself, don't focus on what's going on with you. There's no way, and it's basically the devil's only desire and his only strategy is to get your eyes off
Hmm.
of the
Hmm.
of the right thing.
Hmm.
And I mean, I'm so glad to hear what you said because it's like a cloud over a lot of people in Russia.
Yeah.
yeah.
I can't believe this.
I see that also in the denomination that I came out of, because what they say is that you're totally depraved.
Right.
Hmm.
You're only saved by God's grace. You didn't do anything to deserve your salvation. You're one of the elect. So you're super special, which is like, you can't believe how annoying that sounded to me, because I certainly didn't feel very special. Um, and and when God looks, these are all things I heard growing up. When God looks at you, he doesn't see you. He just sees Christ,
Hmm.
because you're covered in his blood. And like, that sounds like Carrie, the movie.
Mm,
You know what I mean? Like, it didn't, none of that sounded in the least bit encouraging to me. I could never understand why people would get so excited about it. And it's very much the same that you saw in Russian Orthodoxy, right? Like this, because I think that that's why I was saying earlier, I think people need to think more about the fact that they are made in the image of God. That, that there is as they'd say in Latin, an imago Dei within each one of us, right? Because that was the thing in my Calvinist upbringing that I pushed hard on was, why would Jesus die for me if he doesn't even see me?
Yes.
He doesn't even know who I am.
Right.
Well, he did that for his own glory. God does that. God glories in himself. And I'm like, oh my God, he sounds like a narcissist. You know? Oh, he doesn't even see me. I'm I'm nothing to him. So yeah, I'm not blaming the Calvinists or the Orthodox for that matter. To me, this is a human problem. And it's another form of narcissism to wallow in that stuff. Like Joy said here, keep your mind in hell and despair not.
It's a very difficult path, and my priest, and it really does come down to temperament as well. He said, some people respond very well to Saint Silouan, which is who said that quote, the keep your mind in hell and despair not. I mean, Christ said it to Saint Silouan. But there's the other approaches from Wounded by Love by Saint Porphyrios, where it is, instead of, some people need to be hard on themselves, and other people need to learn how to let God's love heal them because they're too hard on themselves, right? And it's a different form of, like you were saying, it's a different form of pride where you try to, you hold this high standard, and every time you don't hold it, you don't meet this high standard that you have for yourself in your head, you fall into despair. And that's the pride part that he said, it's just easier if you just, like you were saying earlier, empty yourself, and you're just looking for ways to serve Christ through the day. Small things, big things, whatever. But in every moment that comes up, that presents itself, you're trying to find a way to navigate through that moment in a way that would please Christ, that would bring a smile to his face. And he's like, that's the easiest way it's been for me to visualize it while I'm, thinking of what to do or what to say to someone. How would I, how could I do this in a way that would make Christ happy? Or what is a small thing I could do? I could go do the dishes right now, or I could go, read some Psalms in front of my icons. I could go, do some prostrations, or I could go, help the neighbor, whatever. It is a way of where you're looking to serve Christ rather than trying to sweat your way through resisting temptation, or white knuckling your way through resisting, like I said, temptations, or being angry at somebody or whatever. It's just kind of a more gentle approach that he's really seeing he has to use with most people nowadays.
Well, a friend of mine was reading the Philokalia, and he remarked that, what he noticed was sometimes they were saying to the monks, because this is instructional manuals for monks, okay, like it's not for everyday folks, but sometimes they were getting instruction, really hardcore, like get in your cell, fast and pray, don't come out, and then get out of your cell, get into the garden, take a walk, plant some trees, and you could see it as like this little pattern, right?
Yes.
So it's a good way to look at it, like not get stuck in the details, but to see it as a whole.
Yeah.
that is what our life is like. There are times where we need to be hard on ourselves, and then there are times when we need to be gentle and compassionate, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Just as we need to be hard on our children, and other times we need to be gentle and compassionate. We need to
yeah,
have that same, we need to be able to see ourselves from a third person perspective.
Hmm.
That's what I think.
which is
Instead of
why you
being,
really need a spiritual father, because
yeah,
it's easy to delude yourself, right? It's easy to trick yourself. And for me, anyway, I'm speaking personally. I have, if I try to look at myself third person, I'm very good at ignoring the bad parts.
yeah, I mean, I spent a lot of years deluding myself,
Yeah,
but God saw me through it, and
right. Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
richer for it.
yeah.
In a weird
True.
way, right?
Right. True.
So,
God
but
can't turn all the glory. Sure.
yeah, so but like there's moments where, like George was saying, you don't know where these thoughts come from, right? Some people are like, where did that come from? Everybody has that experience. They have a thought and they're like, what? And I mean, I remember, because I really struggled with self-condemnation. It was a constant battle. It was so
Yeah.
bad. You have no idea. It was terrible. And I haven't had that problem for many years. And one day recently, I was just opening the sliding glass door and moving into the house from outside, and all of a sudden this self-condemnation thing came in to my head. And I hadn't done anything wrong. Like, I hadn't done anything wrong. It was just a normal taking my boots off, getting my coat off, you know. And my first thought was, where did that come from?
Mm.
Because I was giving it verity. I was thinking, oh, that must be true.
Hmm.
And then I went, that is a lie.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't accept it.
Hmm.
Sayonara. Sayonara, friend.
Yeah. That's it.
And it was gone. It was gone and it never came back,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
But
Hmm.
that felt like a victory lap for me. I'm telling you. I was just like, ooh, I did the thing. I was able to
I saw it.
not, I saw it. Yeah, I didn't recognize it right away because it was first time in a long time. And I hadn't had any practice. That was my first practice run. And but yeah, it was good. It was really good. It's skedaddled, I tell you.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Hmm.
I remember it makes me think for some reason. I don't know if it has anything to do with anything, but it makes me remember. I remember this conversation we had with a bunch of guys, back in Russia. We were talking about the temptation of pornography for a while, and when we were thinking about it and discussing it, it seems like there were clearly two points of view. One was, and that's what I really, really believe deep in my heart, is that uh, if you have this temptation, there's no, I mean, it makes no sense to battle it head on. It makes sense to realize that you have emptiness inside, and it's a revealing. It's a moment of revelation. When you have this
Hmm.
temptation, it reveals what is inside. This total depth of this, like sort of reservoir that cries
Right.
for being filled with living water, and you go to the source. And then of course, when you have the when you fix your eyes on the source, then you can deal with that, you know.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really matter whether you've fallen this time or not. But the other point of view, which really pains me for some reason, I don't know, but it was basically that, the reason that people fall for that temptation, uh, is because they haven't repented enough.
Mm.
They haven't wept enough over their sins. They haven't. I don't know that particular focus. But the interesting thing I can tell you, because I've been with those guys for many many years, that
Mm.
is that approach doesn't help to get rid
No.
of the temptation. at
No.
all. You know,
Yeah.
No.
you just keep falling into it, and it's like the law. You're trying to be saved by some rules you've come up with. I don't know. It's
Yeah,
just
yeah, yeah.
mind-boggling.
No, it's
Well,
true. You know,
I was going through. I had a gambling issue earlier in my life. This was many years
I'll be
ago.
right back, guys. I just got to run.
Sure.
Mm.
I had a gambling addiction, and I was going to therapy for it. And my therapist said one time to me, he said, um, "What would you say What would you say you're addicted to? What is it about gambling?" And I said, "Well, I like the rush. I like the feel of it. It feels great when things are going well." And he said, "Yeah, I think that's part of it." He said, "But I want you to think about something." He said, "In my experience, people who are addicted to gambling and people who have addictions in general are actually addicted to the feeling they feel right after a big loss."
Hmm.
And he said, "What I've seen is that they feel deep inside of themselves, they feel like something is broken or wrong or flawed or evil, and they don't know exactly what it is. And so they're trying to do things that make them feel that feeling is accurate. They're
Hmm.
like trying to act it out." And he said, "So I would submit," and he said, "I think you should spend some time thinking about whether it might actually be the losing part that you're addicted to."
Hmm.
And
Interesting.
that relates a lot to what you're saying, I think, with
Hmm.
these guys who spend, oh, you just need to cry more and you need to cry over your tears. It's like that's actually it's I mean, there is something about the porn side, but it's also the feeling right after where you go, oh, like it's the despair that is actually as addicting as the
Yeah.
what happened before the despair, right? Where it's the
Yeah, it's
despair,
really tricky.
it's the
Yeah.
cycle. It's the cycle that's addicting. It's this is going to help me not feel that way, and then, oh, it made me feel that way. This is
Hmm.
going to help me not feel that way. Oh, it made me feel that way, so I am bad. Oh, this is
Yeah.
going to help me not feel that way. Oh, I am bad. Right? It's like that's the
Hmm.
punishment. That's the self punishment. That's part of any addiction, I think.
Yeah. Well, it is tricky. I mean, it manifests both individually, like you know, each person, and it also manifests on the national level as well, because
Mm.
countries have their own cycles,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
I think I pretty much know pretty clearly what the Russian cycle is. But being here 8 years, I think I'm starting to get what the American cycle is. Not
Yeah.
not not as clearly, but there are these things, these patterns that you just talked about. You see
Yeah.
that, you know,
Yeah.
it's yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we tend to use war as a way of uniting, right?
Mm,
When things are falling apart or fracturing, they they and we find
mm,
someone's business to mind, and everyone unites behind the flag, and then it's cool to be American again,
mm.
and all the flags are on all the houses, but it doesn't take long for the fracturing to start again,
Well, yeah, yeah,
because it's not a good thing to rally around. That shouldn't be
yes,
what unites a country, right?
yeah.
So
It's just very, very interesting. It kind of brings me back to a conversation I had with a friend over about unity or false unity and true unity. And what was I going to say? Uh, yeah, basically that um, it'll come back.
okay,
It was a good thought, but it'll come
yeah,
back.
that happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, my priest submits that. So I was listening to a talk from my priest just recently. He gave a retreat at a different parish, and he posted the videos. He has one more he's going to post. He has 3 videos from it, and he's posted 2 of the 3. In the second one, he was talking about the whole. He said, "No, here's something." He said, "If someone clips this and sends it to my bishop, then bye bye priesthood." But he said, he said, the devil is not actually doesn't actually care whether you sin. The devil is not trying to do that. He's like, the devil is just trying to get you to fall into
Despair.
That's it. He's trying to get you to stop praying and to fall into despair.
Stasis.
Yes.
That's what they want.
Yeah.
Because God is dynamic.
Yeah.
The opposite is stasis. And, from what you're saying, Eugene, it sounds like that's where your friends are. They're a little bit stuck.
Yeah.
But that's also in the story of Pilgrim's Progress. The Castle of Despair. Do you remember that? I remember that the most. Yeah.
Yeah. Or from Never Ending Story about the unicorn getting trapped in the sand pit, the quicksand of despair.
Yeah, I never watched that one.
It's one of those it was endearing when I was young. I enjoyed it a lot. It didn't really hold up. Not as well as some of my other childhood movies, but but it was good. That was an image I don't forget though. It was like the he had a unicorn that he was riding, and it got trapped in that sand, and it was the quicksand of despair, and he was trying to plead with it to not listen, but it was apparently disregarding him and was sinking slowly, and so
yeah, that story that McDonald tells of the little girl seeking butterfly wings, my favorite one in Fantasties. Yeah, they knock her down and walk all over her. That's what those self-condemnation things are doing, while she's trying to collect her butterfly wings. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, McDonald has a lot of that kind of thing in his stories where people are encased in marble, and I think that's also indicative of idolatry, because the psalm that talks about idolatry, they have eyes and see not, they have ears and hear not, they have hands and feel not, right? At the end of that psalm, it says, and those who worship them become like them. They become like stone, right?
Yeah, petrification. Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think we can feel it spiritually when it's happening to us, right? When get up in the morning and you think, okay, what am I gonna do today? It's the same old routine. It's like this, and this, and this, but then also you sort of step back and realize, is this all there is? What is it really that I'm getting up in this morning for? And that's really the question that I've been asking myself, and when I'm able to answer that, it just makes all the difference, because I just know why I get up in the morning. And the reason could be that this meaning that it could be totally unrelated to the usual things that I do. It could be just something that the Spirit laid in my heart.
Yeah.
And but it gets me out of this stasis, this petrification, because I feel the breath like of Aslan coming into me and making me. We're just a good friend of mine just called this morning, and we talked about that specific thing, that when you get older, especially as you get older, the desires tend just desire in general just gets really
It
uh,
wanes.
it wanes. Yes, just what is there to desire? But without desire, we are not alive,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what Dante spoke about in the three canticles.
Mm-hmm.
Like every circle of hell is full of people that have stopped their desires. It's just a sort of one, or every sin is basically a, a way to stop a desire this or that way.
Yeah.
And then you of course in the center is Lucifer himself in the frozen lake where all the desires are frozen. There's nothing happening. There's no movement
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
there, and that's it's just the. I mean, on the if I think about it in spiritual terms, this is the most dreadful thing that can happen. Just to wake up in the morning and say, "There's, I don't know why I should be getting up today." You know?
You know, when I suffered with depression, I suffered with doom and gloom in the mornings,
Mm.
which is there's a word for it now, and I can't remember. Diurnal? Is it diurnal depression? Something like that. And it's the worst. I mean, because like Cody says here, when I pray first thing in the morning, um, there's a reason that you face east because that's where the sun rises. It is the morning. The east is the new day, right? And there's a couple of little poems that I wrote. Um,
I'll be right back. Excuse me.
Mhm.
Mornings, one goes, mornings are like midwives. They hand me the day, new, unspoiled, and mine entirely. I will love today. I just know it. And then another one that I wrote is called Waking Up Early. And it goes, my cat wonders, why so early? Quick belly scratch. I heave the duvet off my warm body, cold air over my limbs lifting me. The rituals begins. I think I'll find God in these early morning hours. I think he will join me as I shake off the weariness of the night. And I do. A puppy stares through the window, wondering. I wanted to see what she does while she waits. I wanted to be first, but the sun woke her. I think they know him, they who rise with warm rays and sleep with the silver of starlight, they who breathe in and out without a worry, unburdened. I see it in their eyes. They have no questions. They breathe in and out. I think if I rise early, he will speak to me. I think if I rise early, I will see the stillness of a house broken by revelation. I think if I rise early, there will be something waiting for me.
Wow,
Yeah,
thank you for this.
yeah.
Yeah, it's something that's been on my mind as well, especially in the mornings. Some mornings I'm fine, and some mornings I have to really ask this question of myself and find an answer anew. And then one thing that's been really helping me is to take an hour, and I usually go for a walk in this little park we have nearby. It's very, very solitary, you know, basically nobody there, just me. And I try to have no agenda and try to have no thoughts at all of what I'm, even of what I'm gonna do. And of course, I have some things I need to do, but um, I just want to be there and just listen to whatever is gonna come up for me.
Hmm.
And because that's one thing that I forget to do, because I mean it's so easy for me to just get up and start going, going going, without really, understanding this divine, getting in touch with this divine I am. Because I am is who I am, and it's my identity. I am, and not what I do, and and uh, and it's interesting how it works because I walk the same trails basically, and by this time I pretty much know every tree, I know
Yeah.
every bush, and I almost see how they meet me because how you been doing? Okay, oh, you've got new leaves today. Okay, there's mulberry that's just starting to bloom and putting out all the leaves, and I didn't know mulberry actually sprouts leaves together with the berry at the same time. But just saw it, and then all of a sudden I have this sensation of being and
Yeah.
I amness, and then that's where I come back to that's where the desire starts coming back.
Yeah.
And maybe you're right. That's the morning thing. Morning's like a midwife
Yeah.
giving itself of itself to me,
Yeah.
and and it's so much bigger than me. Just
Yeah. And I personally think too that, when you rise up, like that poem that I read at the beginning, in the morning I rise. I can't remember how it went anymore, but my daughter printed it off for a Christmas gift for me. In the morning I rise, seeking your face. I rise as I look to the hills. I rise. In the valley of death, I rise. I see the heavens. I rise. I touch the stars. I rise. And when I was writing it, I was thinking of a helium balloon. Like, there's just no way that you can stop that thing from going up, right? And my daughter printed off my poem, and then she had my oldest granddaughter draw a picture to go with it. And nobody knew that I was thinking of a balloon when I wrote that. And this is what my granddaughter drew a picture of. Can you see that?
mm,
A hot air balloon.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
You know?
oh, wow,
And I'm like, she got it.
she got it.
That was so cool. It made me cry, actually.
Yeah. I have
Yeah.
to go, guys. So good to see you.
Thanks for joining us. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Bye, Eugene. Next time.
Yeah. See you. And next time. See you.
Yeah. Yeah, Joy, she did. Cody, it's a project long in the making. I would love to do something with my stuff. I just have to put my ass in this seat and do it, and that's the problem. I never sit still very long. Oh, it's terrible. Yeah. Well,
Yeah, I'm sitting here. My mind has gone calm, which
Good.
it's very nice. Yeah, it's. I was saying that to someone the other day. I've been I've taken up a new habit of walking every day, and I was telling someone the other day I just walk until my mind goes smooth.
mm,
And I said sometimes it only takes 30 minutes, and sometimes it takes a couple of hours.
mm-hmm.
But man, it makes a big difference.
Oh yeah.
Helps a lot, and I welcome these great Lent. We were talking earlier about the cycles, and I think the feast fast cycle is a real embodiment of that, idea of, and during this time, I try to fast more from media and from YouTube and from social media, and it is really nice to just have space to let things clunk around in there.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then, they clunk around long enough and then they just kind of dissipate and then it gets really quiet. And I had never experienced that before I became Orthodox. Never. I had never experienced peace of mind, and
Wow.
it's such a gift. It's such a gift. Yeah.
Yeah. When I was recovering from all my mental health stuff, whenever the chaos would erupt in my mind, and it was usually like self condemnation, you're not good enough, all that kind of thing. Um, I would just get up and put my boots on and go outside and walk. And I would look up. I often take looking down walks, but
Hmm.
I would make myself look up into the trees, at the moss, at the clouds, you know.
Yeah.
Um, Sometimes I'd just find a nice place to lay down and stare at the sky, you know.
Yeah.
And it without any big efforts, like I wasn't trying, I wasn't, you know.
Yeah. Right.
I it would just all go away. It had no hold on me.
Yeah.
It was amazing. Yeah. Cassandra, I've been reading about fasting. It's not a practice I grew up with, but lately I felt the need for it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I grew up LDS. I grew up Mormon, and their fasting was like no food, no drink for 24 hours once a month. That was their fast. So they had fast Sunday, and it was the first Sunday of every month. And they would do so Saturday evening you would eat dinner, and then you wouldn't eat again until Sunday evening dinner, and no food, no drink. And so when I heard Orthodox, went 40 days fasting, I was like, what? but uh, but for us, it's basically vegan for 40 days, and then there's Holy Week after that. And and so it is restricted, and you feel tired, and you can add wine and olive oil on the weekends, and that is definitely medicinal. It helps a lot, but you feel tired, and you feel a little grouchy, and you feel a little weak, and these are all good things to feel. It's good things to be reminded of how weak you are and how dependent you are on God for all things, right? And how easy, how how close you actually are to being a really primitive garbage person, right? Like if you go 3 or 4 days without, because we do have, like, right at the beginning of Great Lent, there are some people who don't eat anything, and some who don't eat or drink anything for 3 days. Um, the first 3 days of Great Lent, especially monastics, will strive for that. And it's amazing after 3 days of not eating or drinking how raw your responses are or can be, right? Like it's something where you find just how delicate and how brittle you actually are. You
Mm.
know, how close to, how much you take equilibrium for granted, or being satiated, right? It's like it's a it's a good practice. I'm very grateful for it. It's been probably the biggest part of the transformation of becoming Orthodox, is entering into the fasting calendar. And I really didn't even know that was part of Orthodoxy for a long time. Like I was there for a few months. I mean, yeah, I was almost a year before I was like I didn't really learn about fasting until I was baptized, and I was like, oh wait, what? Oh wow. And it was hard, and it is still hard. It's I still just, during Great Lent, will find myself just standing in front of the fridge. I'm like, what am I doing? There's nothing in the fridge anyway. Just go for a walk. So, but it's good. It's been a very, very meaningful part of growing closer to Christ, and um, realizing my weakness and my dependence on Him for all things.
Hmm. Yeah, Tony says it's good to have a prayer spot along the way. I have I have my my icon of Saint Seraphim. This winter, I haven't gone out as often as I thought I would, just because, it was winter.
Yeah.
And but the other day I went in the morning, and it's I took the snowmobile because we still have snow on the ground, and the lake is frozen. So like Saint Seraphim is overlooking the lake, and all in front is woods that are standing dead in the water because the lake formed and flooded, and so they've been dead. These trees have been dead in the water for a long time, and some of them are like this big around, some of them are this big, and some of them are fairly close to the shore, and they really block the view. And I'm like, oh. And I had many times thought to myself, even before Saint Seraphim was there, I was like, I gotta get rid of these trees here. They're just so annoying. They're so block. Like when I got the binoculars and I'm looking at ducks on the lake, I'm having to go around the trees, or I'm following a duck and all of a sudden there's a tree.
Yeah.
So I bombed home, got my calf sled and my chainsaw, my helmet and my gas, and flew back out there and cut down 6 trees.
Wow.
And yeah, I got right into it. And it was really funny because I was working with Saint Seraphim. Like I had this moment where I had this image of him, because he lived in the woods.
Yes.
And I'm like, he had to get wood. He had to cut wood, right? So
Yep.
me and Saint Seraphim were cutting wood together. It was it was actually really special. I don't want to get too into it. You guys will think I'm crazy.
No, we already know you're crazy. It's okay. Yeah. No, I understand. I understand what you're saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Saint Seraphim and I got a few loads of wood. I still have a load back there. I was going to go in there today, but I ended up at that webinar thingy with McGilchrist and Desnet for 2 hours, and by the time it was over, the sun had come out and the snow was all slushy, and I thought, well, I'll wait till tomorrow morning and then I'll go again, because then it'll be nice and frozen. It'll freeze tonight, and then I can go out on my days are getting cut short because it's going to start thawing, and I won't have enough snow to snowmobile on,
All right. Yeah.
and then I can't drive out there until it dries up. So I mean,
Yeah.
I could get out there and just cut wood and stack it up, which I might just do. But I won't be able to haul it when the snow's gone till everything dries up. So yeah, that was good. It was a good
Yeah.
couple days. I did that for a couple days in a row.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of the impression I was thinking about when Eugene was talking about, he gets up and he goes for a walk and he just kind of gives time for whatever to bubble up, and what you're going to do today. And I like that really ties to your image of, you're out there and then you're with Saint Seraphim and you're like, oh, I need to clean this. I need to get rid of these trees. And it just kind of becomes a thing you have to do, right? And it becomes the focus of your day. And it's beautiful to think of participating in that with a saint, with your patron saint, where he's there with you and he's pointing at some things that you've been putting off for a while, and you're finally like, okay, I won't put it off anymore.
Yeah.
I'll go ahead and do it. It needs to be done. I know it needs to be done. And it's nice to have the space and the freedom to be able to move that way, but you don't have to live on 160 acres or whatever it is you have to do that, right? It's like anyone can go through that practice because the saints will point you at what needs to be done in your life, right? Everybody has.
There are a lot of people right now on the highway that I live on. Like it's 50 kilometers to town. And when I drive to town, I often see people at this time of the year with a garbage bag and a stick.
Yeah.
And they're picking garbage out of the ditches, usually recyclable cans and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, if I was living in an apartment all winter long, kind of locked up in town, and the weather got nice, I'd hop in my car with a garbage bag and go out and just walk up and down the ditches.
Yeah. Yeah.
That like there's a lot of things you can do that don't sound glamorous,
Right.
but they're quiet forms of meditation and in service to the greater good.
God needs magpies. Yeah. God needs magpies.
Yeah. Yeah. And like Eugene said, he knows every tree on his walk now, and that there's something really, really beautiful about that, right? Like
Yeah.
getting to know, seeing the cycles, all that stuff. I had a scare this morning.
Hmm.
Actually, last night, I was usually when I have to catch the geese right before it gets too dark, but it's not too light. That's when I call them, they'll come in.
Hmm.
If I call them too early, they will ignore me. And if I call them too late, they're stuck because they can't see.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I have to right at that moment, I have to run out there and go. And so I'm out there and I'm just getting close to too dark because I fell asleep on the couch. And I woke up, I'm like, oh no. And I ran out and I called and they didn't answer. And, usually they'll make a little noise, if they're stuck, they'll make a little noise. So I know where they are. And they were nowhere. I looked in all the spots where they were nowhere. And I was like, oh no. And I'd seen them go down the creek because it's breeding season now.
Oh yeah.
And so they have to breed in water. And so they were following. And I thought, oh, they probably went too far down the creek. And then something got them because it's a hill. It goes down and predators know, like if our chickens go down there, we lose them because they just kind of hang out at the edge of the field and wait
Right.
for lunch to arrive.
Yeah.
And so then this morning I went out, called them again, nothing. I walked all the way down the creek, all the way to the bottom of the fence line, following their tracks and looking for other tracks. Couldn't see sign. I saw a little bit of sign of their tracks, but then they didn't go very far, Then I thought, anyway, I just looked everywhere for them down there. Then I got on the snowmobile and went up to the barn to feed the sheep. And I thought, well, I'll just take a buzz by the pond. There's a pond up there. And sure enough, they were standing there's a little island in the middle of the pond. And they were probably able to swim that day that they disappeared on me in the pond and get on the island. But then at night, it half froze. So the ice would break if they stepped on it. So they were stuck.
Yeah.
Stuck on the island. But I was so happy to see them. I'm like, there you are. I don't know why I started telling that story. There was a reason for that. But anyway. So yeah, my morning was, because I came back from my long walk along the creek looking for them.
Oh.
Sad,
Yeah.
And I'm often reminded in those moments of how quickly we catastrophize.
Of what?
How quickly we catastrophize.
Oh, yeah.
We're like, they're dead. Something killed them. They probably suffered.
Yeah.
I'm immediately looking for blood in the snow. Like.
Yes.
Just stuck up at the
pool. Yeah, I'm prone to that as well. Yeah.
Well, and the worst case scenario.
Yeah. Related to that too is that I also think we're so overconfident in assigning causality to things.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like you don't know what causes anything.
No.
I think our whole concept of causality is really broken.
Mm-hmm.
Or thinking that only one thing can cause another one thing, right? Like that's just crazy.
You know what? I just want to say this. Matthias Desmet said this today. It's the only thing I wrote down from the whole webinar. Uncertainty is the precondition to being human.
Oh yeah, that's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's that is that is the anti. It's against the spirit of our age. The spirit of our age is seeking certainty through counting and tracking and
Measuring.
forecasting, measuring. You know,
Hmm.
and man, it just causes problems, and it blinds you to the what the problems are,
Hmm.
because you get overconfident in what you've measured and you don't realize that you've separated from what is. You know, you've it's another form of idolatry.
Yes, it is. Yeah. And
And I
it,
see it
and
all the time. I deal with it all the time at work. You know, where people put too much faith in the data and too much faith in, and I do data for a living, right? And
Mhm.
I'm the one who tell them, hey guys, like this is just, you know,
An
take it with a
approximate.
grain of salt. This is like not,
Yeah.
this has issues. It's not um it's not pristine, it's not pure, it's not unadulterated, and it's not 100% accurate, and it's not, because there's all these little issues that just sneak in that you can't completely get out of it. You can't get out of the system, and it's just, it is this attempt. I think it really comes down to, and I'm psychoanalyzing here, forgive me, but I really think, because I'm basically projecting my own past into this scenario. But for me, it was a result of being afraid of dying, right? Out of a fear of death, you
This is
feel like,
exactly
well, if
what
I can.
Cody says.
Oh yeah, there you go. I wasn't reading it. I'm sorry. I suppose we catastrophize out of a subconscious fear of that suffering in ourselves. It's tied to preservation of the self. I'm sensing. Yeah. Well, that's something else my priest was talking about in his most recent talk, was about, we're he's like, we have this ego, and the ego has wounds, and we're protecting the wounds because we don't want to experience the pain again. So we build the ego. It's like the ego like calcifies around the wound, but it preserves it at the same time. That's the problem. And he's like, the whole aim is that you have to you have to open that up to God. You have to open those wounds and allow Him to come in and heal. And that it's the same thing with the fear of dying, right? It's like I had extreme. I really suffered from that deeply. Just an extreme terror of dying. Like the only recurring theme that I had in my dreams for decades was the dream of your teeth falling out, and the dream of your teeth falling out is a fear of death, right? And I just had it all the time, and it was because I was afraid of like unfinished business or being unprepared or not, just not knowing what was going to happen, the uncertainty, and uncertainty was associated with fear for me. And now, since becoming Orthodox, I've been able to be rehabilitate. Yes, Christ openly shows the wounds for us to inhabit and enter with our own senses. Yes, slowly they're revealed and opened up, and then God comes in and heals it. Right, and it has helped me overcome my fear of death, which has helped me to be able to love more deeply and be loved more deeply, by God and by the people in my life, right? Because I was holding on to everything so much that I couldn't love it for what it was, and it wasn't a flow, right? Like love has to flow, and I was so afraid of like trying to hold on to everything and everyone that,
Well, it's like hanging on to a life preserver and not
yeah,
reaching out for the arm of the guy who's trying to pull you into the boat.
yes, Kevin, yeah, exactly, right,
I wrote well, I mean, you started talking about that because of certainty.
right,
And certainty demands order, because if you have order, you can semi predict, right?
right,
If my
right,
pantry is full, right? My stores are full, then I know I'm going to live this much long. It's always a fear of death, right? Like
yeah,
Heidegger talks about thrownness
yeah.
towards death. And
Well, and the
and
parable of the guy who was like, the wealthy guy who was like, oh wow, my barns are full. I need to build bigger barns, right?
Yeah, and but I wrote a song. I wrote a song years ago when I was living in Switzerland because everybody is so freaking neat and tidy in that
Oh, yeah.
country that it was after a while it was kind of driving me insane. And so I wrote a song called "Down Where the Dirt Is." But there's these two verses in the song. It's there's a wait, how's it go? There's a quiet hissing sound in the green leafy trees, like life escaping from us as we tumble in the breeze. And in all of our ideas as to organize our ways, there's a demon in our order, making sure of better days.
Mm. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. There was that reminds me of an image from Zen Buddhism where I was watching a documentary about it and about Buddhism when I was young. And there was a Buddhist monk who he was sweeping it was fall and he was sweeping all the leaves off of the sidewalk. There were a lot of leaves and he was sweeping them all off. And he was cleaning the sidewalk. And the last thing he did, he was finished and it looked beautiful. And then he just reached up with his broom and he tapped the tree. And there was just like three or four, there were just like a half a dozen, maybe a dozen leaves that just kind of drifted down on the sidewalk. And that's when he was done. Right. It wasn't
perfect.
Yeah, it wasn't perfect, and it wasn't it was an acknowledgement that he was part of a cycle too.
Right.
Like he was in the cycle. He wasn't trying to override it. He was in it, and he was doing what he made it cleaner, but not perfect.
Right.
And not, and it's that same spirit of the certainty, right? It's like you need a little bit of tension, you need a little bit of uncertainty, you need a little bit of unfamiliarity. I've been telling my daughter this, like, you got to stretch a little bit. It's good for you to be uncomfortable, So she's got stage fright pretty bad, but she agreed to do a duet with her best friend, and they're going to be singing at a concert, and it's difficult music, it's jazz, and and so she has to wake up early to go to the rehearsals, and she has stage fright. And I was just like, this is all perfect. You're doing exactly the right thing.
Yeah, this is what Cody's talking about. Learning how to die well. That's what stage fright is.
Yes. Yeah.
Having stage fright is learning how to die well. Let me tell you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
The fear of the Lord, being afraid of nothing else. Yeah. Amen. That's it. Everything else is. There was a saint who said it. Everything else is peanuts. You all that matters in this life is your movements toward Christ. That's it. And everything else is peanuts. So, Don, I used to have a neighbor who raked the grass and handpicked every single leaf off. I always wondered why he did that, because within 10 minutes he'd be upset about a leaf on his lawn. Right. Yeah. My dad and I used to joke about people who get mad at the rain, right? Like, it's raining today. Ugh. And you're just like, what? Why are you mad about it? Right? Like, what can you do about it? Why choose that response? That's so weird. But
because we live in artificial worlds, that's why.
Yeah.
They can't be grateful for the rain because they don't need the rain. Their world is completely climate controlled.
Yeah.
Right?
That's true. Yeah. Yeah.
So
yeah.
People who, I know a lot of people in Switzerland, they go on holidays and then they come home and, so how was your holiday? Oh, the weather was terrible. You know? But so their whole holiday was ruined. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
So you
Wow.
didn't feel the rain in Thailand on your face? You didn't notice what was out in the rain in Thailand on your while you were in Thailand? You know, you didn't look for slugs?
Yeah,
Like,
right.
you know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
no, it was just terrible and we couldn't do anything, so never going back there again. Just
That's
okay.
so odd.
It's so
Yeah.
terrible.
So it is. It's
I
very
it's just like how can you enjoy anything when everything has to be perfect? Like Dawn's
right,
neighbor lawn,
right,
right?
right.
Like Dawn, I had a neighbor who her husband would cut the grass and he mowed it with a hand push mower, the turning
Yeah.
wheel thing. And then she would go out and lay down with scissors and cut anything that was sticking out. Yeah,
I can't even process that.
I know.
I mean, I'm kind of slobby, so it's really hard for me to even relate. Like,
And that's just that's just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to living in Switzerland.
it's crazy.
Oh God.
Yeah, exactly. Cody,
Right.
agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the smell of life. Yeah, the smell of the world coming back to life.
You know, like people have asked me, my sister, my mom, they're always like, why don't you get rid of all those animals? You wouldn't have all those chores to do. I'm like, are you kidding? I get out every single day, no matter what the weather.
Yep.
And
Keep
you know
going.
what? I can't say unless it's like close to minus 40-ish, which I've had.
Yeah,
That is not fun. But
that's not.
you just bundle more,
Right.
and there's lots of things to really look out for when it's that cold. So you can't not go out because all your animals would be frozen solid.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
So like you have but no, every day is incredible. Like the other day I went out to do my chores and I heard this trumpet. I'm like, and then I
That's like,
looked up and there was a whole flock of trumpeter swans flying over me.
wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. No. Yeah. I.
And you just
I.
want to fall on your face and worship God.
Right. Yeah.
Like that's
Exactly.
how I
Yeah.
feel.
Yeah. Amen.
you know?
That's it. Yeah. Well, and it
I
gets
don't
you
know if I
out,
ever
and
told you this, Jeremy, but when we were doing the renovations on this house, we lived in a wall tent for about a year. On just next to the house, right?
mm,
It's still out there actually. And
mm,
when it was time to move back in, I didn't want to. I could
mm,
hear everything outside.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
could hear the owls at night. I could hear, coyotes. I could hear wolves. I could hear
Yeah.
the rain on the roof. The wind, the pine needles falling on.
Yeah. I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, it was really, and we had renovated our house to our dream home, and I'm
Mm,
like, I should really be grateful, but I'm
right.
not. I don't want to move in there. I don't because
Yeah. No, I get it.
I mean it's nice to be warm and comfortable.
Yeah.
Because I finally moved in, like I stayed in the tent till I think it was the end of December, and it was already minus 15 Celsius outside. And the
Yeah.
floor is not insulated in the tent,
Right.
it's on a platform. And I was burning a pickup truck load of wood a week because it was just
Yeah.
canvas. It wasn't insulated
Right.
or nothing. And
Yeah.
my husband said, I'm not getting you any more wood. You have to move in. I don't want to.
Yeah. No, I understand. Yeah. Well, I grew up, we slept outside all summer, right? Like every night. We
Mhm.
just sleep out on the backyard, on the back lawn, and no tent, just sleep bag, and there weren't a lot of mosquitoes where we lived. And it was just great. Same thing. You just lay there, you're looking at the stars, you're watching how they move every night. You could see satellites flying over. You could, and hear the different bugs. You hear the different animals, and I loved it. And I'm surprised that I'm sad and surprised that more kids don't do it now. You know,
Yeah.
that more kids don't sleep outside. It's like it's so
There was
good.
a family, quasi neighbors a few miles down the road from us in Telegraph Creek, and they had a really nice house that he built. But before that, they lived in what was now their goat barn. Their old house that they lived in while they were building their really nice house became their goat barn, and it had a loft in it. And every summer, the whole family moved into the loft and
Mm,
slept out there because they missed it so much.
yeah, yeah,
They moved out of their really nice house for
yeah,
years. Every summer, they
yeah.
all slept in the barn loft together.
That's
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. It's pretty addictive, living in the
Yeah, well, and honestly, we have our modern mindset of everybody in a different bedroom and spread all over
Mhm.
the house, and there's a lot to be said for sleeping in a pack.
Yeah,
I mean, the dogs are onto something.
yeah, that's right.
You there's a lot to be said for it. Pretty
Yeah,
sweet.
yeah,
Well, I'm getting tired. I'm starting
yeah,
to fade,
yeah. Time to
but
go.
yeah,
I was
real
just gonna.
pleasure to be here. So my last recommendation I'll repeat is "Wounded by Love" by Saint Porphyrios. And I'm gonna post a link to my priest's YouTube channel
Do that.
because he has two talks. He did one last week. It was called "What Is Sin," and it's very helpful because
Yeah, and
he's
I've watched a number of his videos. They're great.
yeah. And then this week, so these are from the retreat that he did. He had another one called "How to Be a Good Patient in the Spiritual Hospital." And then we had a theologian, a friend of his, who came and did a retreat for us, and they had a conversation called "On Theology, Modern Saints, Distraction, and the News," a conversation with an Orthodox theologian.
Yeah,
Again, very good. So I
that
will
one
just
is
share
good.
his channel
Yeah,
there.
yeah. Well,
Definitely recommend that.
thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you, Jeremy, for giving us the details of St. Patrick and St. Columba.
Yep, not enough details on St. Patrick and a lot of details on St. Columba. Glory to God. So,
Glory to God, and thanks to you, Mister.
yeah,
No,
happy to be
it was
here.
super interesting, and
Yeah, but
yeah,
we put
is
this
that a
in.
special website that gives more detail about the saints that you have there, or
Yeah, it was, and I couldn't post it. Unfortunately, I couldn't post it in the chat. It wouldn't post.
okay,
But yeah, it was on orthochristian.com. It had
orthochristian.com?
it had more detailed. It has more detailed lives of the saints.
Okay, cool,
So, yeah.
great.
Okay.
All right,
Well, thanks for coming. God bless you. God
yeah.
bless all of you. Strength in Great Lent. Struggle well.
Good night, everybody.